Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to the course of Fundamentals of Public Administration. Course code is MPA 406, and today we have the final lecture, that is lecture number 32 of this course. So before we move on to our final lecture of this course, let us have a brief reflection of our previous lectures. So in all of our previous lectures, we have talked about the significance of public administration. We have talked about the administrative functions. We have talked about why administration is important to an organization. We have talked about the role of public administration, particularly with reference to Pakistan. And then we have talked about the role of employees who are called the intellectual capital of an organization. हमने उनकी बात की. We have talked about change. We have talked about how we can bring positive changes in the public sector of Pakistan. We have talked about budget. We have talked about taxation. We have talked about leadership. We have talked about how we can improve our taxation system and things like that. So in today's lecture, I'm going to talk about audit. Now audit, when we talk about efficiency, efficiency is concerned with the relationship between goods and services produced, the outputs, and the resources used to produce them, the inputs. Now efficiency की जब हम बात करते हैं तो definitely we talk about input, output. Like for example, with the help of minimum input, we try to get the maximum output. This is what efficiency is. So if, like for example, 100 rupees आप input में करते हैं और आपका output जो है, if that is less than 100, it means that you are inefficient. So this is really very important that we need to put in our best efforts to be efficient. And an efficient entity produces the maximum output from any given set of inputs. Now, alternatively, it may require minimum input. This will be reflected in increased productivity and lower unit cost. So if we want to be cost effective, this is really very important that we need to focus on efficiency of an organization. So how we can ensure it? So with the help of our most important resource, that is human resource. So when we talk about human resource, that is called the intellectual capital. So this is the most important asset of an organization. So we need to get the best out of our human resources. And of course, our administration that ensures that we can be more efficient, and of course, we can be more effective as well. So talking about effectiveness, it says effectiveness is concerned with achieving predetermined objectives or goals and with actual impact compared with the intended impact. Now you see that effectiveness means that whether we are able to achieve our desired goals or not, whether we are able to achieve our targets or not. So this is really very important. So when we talk about effectiveness, it means that we are focusing on achieving our desired goals and objectives. Now, using a range of performance measures and indicators, it is possible to assess an entity's effectiveness. So this is really very important that we need to ensure that we are going in the right direction. So in order to do that, we can take necessary measures as given in our standard operating procedures. Now, moving our discussions towards political reforms, electoral arrangements की जब हम बात करते हैं, the foundation of the electoral structure for the 3 tiers of local government is the Union Council. Now the Union is a multi-member board for the election of members of the Union Council, that is, each constituency is on average 25,000, and each Union Council is composed of 21 directly elected members. Now, the Nazim and the Naib Nazim, Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, are elected on a joint ticket. Now, talking about the various functions of Union Councils in Pakistan, Union Councils are, as we know, are the lowest local unit in rural areas. The lowest unit in urban area is called Town Committee. A Union Council, as we know, has a population of 25,000, performs following major functions. And the first one is municipal function. Now, it is the function of sewerage and sanitation, that is cleanliness of area. Now, this is one of the most important functions of Union Council. क्योंकि जब हम बात कर रहे हैं यूनियन काउंसिल की, तो ऑफ कोर्स जब हम कहते हैं कि cleanliness of our area. Now, this is really very important because the more hygienic we are, the more like a better environment, clean environment we have, the better health we have. So जब हम अक्सर कहते हैं कि health is wealth, so this is really very important that in order to be healthy, this is really very important that we need to have a cleaner environment. So when we talk about cleanliness of our area, this is one of the major function of a Union Council. The another function of Union Council is finance. It performs financial function of managing expenditures and rousing revenues. Of course, talking about increasing revenues and talking about, of course, expenditures. Now you see that this is really very important, that Union Council is responsible to manage the function of finance, because with the passage of time your expenses are increasing, and if your revenues are not increasing accordingly, of course you will face many problems. So this is again a very important function of a Union Council. We continue our discussion on the functions of Union Council. The next is the public safety. Managing bridges, culvert, etc. So this is really very important. So if you are managing bridges, you are like doing these type of activities which are for the safety of the people of Pakistan. Then the another function of Union Council is health. Provision of basic preventive health care like controlling epidemics, etc. Again very important, like for example हमने देखा कि पाकिस्तान में डेंगू जो है बहुत ज़्यादा इसकी हमने देखा कि एक बड़ी तेज़ी से फैला और उसको मैनेज किया गया अच्छी तरह से. सो इसी तरह जब हम बात करते हैं एपिडेमिक्स की, जब हम बात करते हैं हेल्थ केयर की, कि लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल वी टॉक अबाउट चाइल्ड केयर, वी टॉक अबाउट women care, when we talk about like newborn babies, when we talk about old age people in our area. So the role of Union Council here is really very important, because the more healthy community we will have, the better, you know, expectations we can of course meet. So this is really very important कि जितनी आपकी health strong होगी, definitely ultimately आपकी performance be increasing at the same level. Education, this is the most important function of Union Council. Provision of basic primary education. So बुनियादी primary तालीम, this is again a very important function of a Union Council. Now इस्लाम में हम कहते हैं जैसे कि इल्म हासिल करो महद से लेकर लहद तक, कि इस दुनिया में आने से लेकर इस दुनिया से जाने तक इल्म हासिल करो. So this is really very important that we need to get education, because education is not only for the purpose of getting a job, it is much more than that. Like for example, an educated person has a better personality. An educated person has a better attitude and behavior. An educated person is a better father or mother. An educated person is a better son or daughter. So this is really very important that overall आपकी जो personality development है, आपका जो attitude है, आपका behavior है, आपका जो thinking pattern है, आपकी जो skills हैं, आपकी जो competencies हैं, वो आपकी strong होती हैं, आपकी develop होती हैं with the help of education. Another function is of literacy. So Union Council has a very important role here. Literacy programs for adults who were unable to receive primary education. Now this is really very important. हमने बात की कि education of our children is really very important. Of course, the education of our adults. So when we talk about adult education, this is really very important. क्योंकि हमारे जो adults हैं, जो लोग अपनी like इस वक्त old age में हैं या like for example अपनी ज़्यादा age में आ चुके हैं, उनके लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है कि they should get education, they should be literate. क्योंकि जब हम ज़्यादा literate हमारे लोग होंगे, like for example जब हम rural areas की बात करें तो definitely we are talking about good farmers. So how we can have good farmers in Pakistan? That is only possible if they are literate, because इस वक्त न्यू टेक्नोलॉजी आ रही है, न्यू फर्टिलाइजर्स आ रही हैं, न्यू इंफॉर्मेशन आ रही है, न्यू इंस्ट्रक्शंस आ रही हैं, न्यू गाइडलाइंस आ रही हैं कि हाउ टू इम्प्रूव आवर एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्ट्स. तो उसको अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए दिस इज रियली वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट दैट वी नीड टू हैव लिटरेट फार्मर्स. सो this is again a very important function of a union council. Now talking about the structure within local government, in addition 3 groups of employees were assigned to the new district governments. These were federal employment groups, primarily district management group and the audit and accounts group. Then we talk about former rural district council employees, and finally we talk of provincial employment groups, particularly public health engineering department, rural development and local government health and education. Now talking about fiscal reforms, we talk of areas of expenditure responsibility of the federal and provincial governments are set out in the Constitution of Pakistan as discussed in our previous discussions. Thus, according to the Constitution, the federal government is responsible for foreign affairs, banking and currency, postal services, transportation like ports, airports, railways, while the main provincial responsibilities are police services, justice, roads, education and health. So now you see that the Constitution of Pakistan says that the federal government has the major areas in its control, whereas those functions relevant to the provinces, like for example police, justice, roads, education and health, that is the primary responsibility of provincial governments. Now continuing our discussion on fiscal reforms, higher levels of government played a dominant role in areas of shared responsibility. Now this is really very important that we need to promote the concept of shared responsibility, because if we do not have the concept of shared responsibility in Pakistan, of course we cannot move forward. So in order to develop and strengthen Pakistan, this is really very important that we need to promote the concept of shared responsibility. So in order to have a shared responsibility, we need to accept our responsibilities. We need to realize that what are the roles we need to play in Pakistan, particularly serving in the public sector of Pakistan. The Constitution accepts that the actual or implied assignments of expenditures and revenues will lead to vertical fiscal imbalances between the upper 2 levels of government, federal and provincial, which are to be resolved through revenue sharing. So this is really very important, that the major purpose of this discussion is that we need to focus on the shared responsibility, and when we talk about the importance of shared responsibility, we focus on the shared revenue and revenue sharing concept. So whatever the revenue the governments are earning, this is really very important that they need to do that revenue sharing. Thus, the Constitution also sets up the National Finance Commission, an institution assigned the task of determining appropriate revenue sharing arrangements among the federal and provincial governments. Now here we discuss the role of National Finance Commission, NFC. So National Finance Commission has a very important role here. Like for example, there is a revenue, like the governments, they earn a certain amount of revenue. Now how that revenue is to be shared between the federal governments and all provincial governments. So this is really very important and most sensitive area. And this is really, this becomes really very important when we talk about like our responsibilities. So allocation of resources to provinces and federal government is the key responsibility of National Finance Commission. So what they do is they allocate financial resources as per agreed formula, जो कि तमाम provincial governments or federal governments, they agree on one formula, and then resources are allocated as per that mutually agreed formula. So National Finance Commission is responsible to implement this in Pakistan. Now talking about federal provincial, in Pakistan, revenue sharing is the dominant part of federal provincial fiscal relationships. So here we are talking about the relationships of federal and provincial in terms of fiscal relations. The main source of provincial revenue is a transfer based on a share of federal tax collection. तो जब हम बात करते हैं रेवेन्यू की, तो डेफिनेटली एक आपकी जो टैक्स कलेक्शन है उसका एक मेजर सोर्स जो हमें नजर आ रहा है, दैट इज द फेडरल टैक्स कलेक्शन. जो फेडरल गवर्नमेंट है, तो मेजर रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन जो है वो फेडरल गवर्नमेंट कर रही है. एंड देन द डिसीजन ऑन द लिस्ट ऑफ टैक्सेस, वी कॉल दैट divisible pool. The ratio of the provincial federal share of the pool and the formula for its distribution to the provinces is to be fixed at least once every 5 years by the National Finance Commission, जो कि हमने अभी डिस्कस किया. So एक formula आपने agree करना है, agree to be agreed by provincial governments and federal government, and implementation is in the hands of National Finance Commission, and this has to be done once every 5 years by the NFC. Now continuing our discussions on political reforms, let us discuss the provincial local transfer. All the 4 provincial governments share resources with district governments. Now again, this is really very important that the provincial governments, they are sharing resources with their respective district governments in all provinces of Pakistan. Now let us discuss some of the weaknesses of the local government system, and these are, the first thing is an attempt to undermine provincial autonomy. The provinces now have to systematically evolve mechanism to share resources. So this is one of the weaknesses, like this is an attempt to undermine provincial autonomy. Now provinces, they have evolved a mechanism to share resources. Also prior to this system, provinces were autonomous and had centralized system. People from remote areas in the provinces had no access to provincial headquarters. तो जब हम previous era की बात करते हैं, तो definitely लोगों के पास they didn't have access to the provincial headquarters, like जो remote areas में लोग रहते थे, but now this is possible. The next is violation of a fundamental structure of Constitution. The Constitution does not provide local government structure, and there is a resistance of bureaucracy against system. The power of bureaucracy has weakness, and at the district level, DCO is answerable to elected Nazim. So these are some of the areas that needs attention. And now let us discuss some of the strengths of the system, and these are, when we talk about the political reforms, the office of DC has been now brought under the control of elected representative. Now this is really very important. When we talking about the DC office, there is elimination of urban-rural division. Attempt has been made to reduce the gap between urban and rural areas. Now this is really very important कि attempts की जा रही हैं, actions लिए जा रहे हैं to reduce the gap between the urban and rural areas, because the persons who are living in the rural areas of Pakistan, they also have the equal right like the persons who are living in the urban areas of Pakistan. So when we talk about rights of the people of urban and rural areas of Pakistan, they have equal rights as per the Constitution of Pakistan. So there should be no discrimination when we talk about the rural areas or the urban areas. So there is an effort, we see that, to minimize the gap between the urban and rural areas. So what we see and what we observe, that efforts are being made. Like for example, we have now more schools opening up in rural areas of Pakistan. We see that there are more health facilities being provided in the rural areas of Pakistan. We see more like different industries, they are opening their different manufacturing units or offices near or in the urban and rural areas of Pakistan. So with the passage of time, we see improvements, like in the sense that more facilities are being provided in the rural areas of Pakistan, because majority of the people of Pakistan live in the rural areas. Pakistan is an agricultural country. So जैसे हमने पिछली डिस्कशन में बात की कि यूनियन काउंसिल की जब हमने फंक्शंस की बात की, तो डेफिनेटली मेजर फंक्शन ऑफ यूनियन काउंसिल इज टू इम्प्रूव द वेलबींग ऑफ द पीपल जिसको वो सर्व कर रही है. सो वहाँ पे हमने बात की एजुकेशन की, लिटरेसी की, उनकी क्लीनलीनेस की हमने बात की, एंड जो वहाँ पे जो बेसिक फैसिलिटीज प्रोवाइड करनी है उसकी हमने बात की. सो व्हाट इज द बेसिक ऑब्जेक्टिव? द बेसिक ऑब्जेक्टिव इज टू ब्रिंग द रियल इंप्रूवमेंट्स इन द रूरल एरियाज ऑफ पाकिस्तान सो दैट they come up like with those urban areas, ताकि there should be no discrimination in Pakistan. Talking about formula, the PFC now has to share resources under a formula, so which is logical and appropriate. So the formula is logical and appropriate, meaning that which is acceptable to all the stakeholders. Now talking about the grassroots organizations, the local government system has established grassroots organizations like Citizen Community Board to oversee the working of government organizations. तो grassroots level पे काम हो रहा है. Like for example, कि एक तरफ तो हम बात करें कि लाइक टॉप लेवल पे जो एक्टिविटीज़ हो रही हैं, बट एट द सेम टाइम ग्रास रूट लेवल पे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस जो हैं उनको इस्टेब्लिश किया जा रहा है. नाउ द थिंग इज सिटीजन कम्युनिटी बोर्ड्स जो हैं या सिटीजन कम्युनिटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस जो हैं उनको इस्टेब्लिश किया जा रहा है. नाउ दीज सिटीजन कम्युनिटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस व्हाट दे आर डूइंग इज दे आर इन डायरेक्ट कॉन्टैक्ट विद द पीपल. Like for example, they meet the local people almost daily, so they are in direct contact with the people, so they are getting direct feedback from the people. So that is why we call that grassroots organizations. So these organizations are really very close to the people, and with the help of the community, with the help of the local people, these organizations are really doing their job well. Enhanced representation of women. Now this is really very important. When we talk about the political reforms, this is one of the most important areas because now you see everywhere. Okay, starting from education. आप खुद मुझे बताएं कि what do you think कि पहले फीमेल ज़्यादा आपको स्कूल, कॉलेजेस, यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में नज़र आती थी, या अभी फीमेल की पार्टिसिपेशन जो है वो पहले से कम हुई है, ज़्यादा हुई है? डेफिनेटली जब हम बात करते हैं प्रेजेंट टाइम की, तो डेफिनेटली अभी हम देखते हैं कि पहले से ज़्यादा पार्टिसिपेशन, बल्कि आई बिलीव कि काफ़ी ज़्यादा पार्टिसिपेशन है फीमेल्स की इन एजुकेशन. अवेयरनेस लेवल बहुत बढ़ गया है. नाउ फीमेल्स जो हैं दे आर ऑलमोस्ट 51% ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन ऑफ पाकिस्तान. तो जब हम ओवरऑल पॉपुलेशन की बात करते हैं पूरे पाकिस्तान की, तो फीमेल्स आर हाई इन नंबर. सो डेफिनेटली अगर आप मेजॉरिटी पॉपुलेशन को अगर एजुकेटेड नहीं होगी, तो दिस हैज ए वेरी डैमेजिंग इफेक्ट ऑन द इकोनॉमी ऑफ पाकिस्तान. So as earlier discussed that education is not only to get a job. Education means personality development. Education means you are a better thinker. Education means that you are a better entrepreneur. So education can bring all positive changes one can think of in our lives. So there is an increased representation of women in our parliament, in our provincial assemblies. So we see females in our like law making bodies. We see females in on those positions where they are making decisions. So women participation is increasing, women representation is increasing. So now in Pakistan we see women in almost every area. Like for example, when we look at the health sector, you see that there are more female who are joining health sector as doctors, as nurses, as supporting staff. So when we talk about health sector, when we talk about any, like for example, look at like public sector of Pakistan. In public sector, we see more women participation. So women are representing their communities, their areas in assemblies, in parliament, in provincial assemblies. And of course the purpose is that they bring the point of view of females who are living in Pakistan. So they bring that direct feedback into the assemblies, and then of course necessary corrective measures are taken for the improvement and for the better performance and more involvement of females in the economy of Pakistan. Autonomy of local representatives. Again, this is another political reform. जब हम बात करते हैं कि local representatives को ज़्यादा autonomy दी जा रही है. Now, autonomy means that you are almost independent to make your decisions. Of course, you have to follow certain rules and regulations, but within the mechanism and within the boundaries of rules and regulations, one is independent to make decisions. So there is like more efforts are being made to like implement the merit system, and this is really extremely good for Pakistan. Now we move towards new public management. The 1980s and 90s saw the emergence of a new managerial approach in the public sector in response to the inadequacies of the traditional model of administration. So now you see that there are certain weaknesses, there are certain inadequacies of the traditional model of administration. So it was like during 1980s and 90s we saw the emergence of new new managerial approach. So this is really very important. So this was like a kind of positive change we see. The new managerial approach was the revival of the idea that private sector is more efficient. Now when we talk about the comparison of the public sector and private sector of Pakistan, now it is a common observation, and of course the research has also proved that the performance of private sector is better than the performance of public sector. So when we talk about the performance of private sector, of course, let me add few arguments here. Whenever we talk about the performance of public and private sector, we need to look at the root causes. That is really very important. That what are the root causes why the performance of public sector is not that much as compared to the private sector of Pakistan. Why private sector is performing better than the public sector of Pakistan? What are the root causes? Of course, employee who is working in the public sector of Pakistan, he or she is responsible for that one thing. Okay, this is one factor. What are the other factors? Like for example, we talk of lack of motivation. Like for example, one very important fact here I'm going to share with you, that the average performer and the excellent performer, both of them are getting equal annual increment if they are serving in the same grade. Now what does it mean? It means कि अगर basic pay scale 17 में दो लोग काम कर रहे हैं और एक पर्सन की परफॉर्मेंस जो है बहुत एक्सीलेंट है और दूसरा पर्सन भी BPS 17 में और उसकी परफॉर्मेंस एवरेज है, but both of them are getting equal annual increment. Now, when the organization keeps on doing this thing, what happens in the long run? After a few months, after a few years, the motivation level of that employee who is an excellent performer starts declining, because he observes that कि I'm doing my best, मैं बहुत काम कर रहा हूँ, बहुत smart work कर रहा हूँ, बहुत efforts कर रहा हूँ, but जो मुझे financial, non-financial benefits दिए जा रहे हैं वो equal हैं उस person के जो average performer है. So what is the suggestion here? Of course, the suggestion is we need to have a difference in the annual increment when we talk about excellent performers and average performers. Because जब तक हम difference नहीं लेके आएंगे rewards के अंदर, जब तक pay for performance system नहीं लेके आएंगे, तो definitely motivation कहाँ से आएगी? So motivation is really very important. Like for instance, मेरी क्लास में जितने भी स्टूडेंट्स हैं, अगर तमाम स्टूडेंट्स को 90% मार्क्स दे दिए जाएं, तो what is the possible result? उसका इम्पैक्ट क्या होगा? लाइक स्टूडेंट उनकी परफॉर्मेंस डिक्लाइन हो जाएगी, और जो पुअर स्टूडेंट्स हैं उनकी परफॉर्मेंस मजीद डिक्लाइन हो जाएगी. बिकॉज जो एक्सीलेंट स्टूडेंट्स होंगे, इंटेलिजेंट स्टूडेंट्स होंगे, दे विल बिकम डीमोटिवेटेड, दे विल बी इन हाई स्ट्रेस कि मैं तो इतनी बेस्ट एफर्ट्स दे रहा हूं और जो स्टूडेंट बेस्ट एफर्ट्स नहीं दे रहे, सबके नंबर बराबर है. सो वी नीड टू शो अ डिफरेंस हियर कि जो एम्प्लॉइज हमारे बेस्ट परफॉर्मर्स हैं उनका रिवॉर्ड सिस्टम डिफरेंट होना चाहिए, और जो एम्प्लॉइज हमारे एवरेज परफॉर्मर्स हैं उनका रिवॉर्ड सिस्टम उनसे कम होना चाहिए. एंड ऑफ कोर्स with the help of training and development of employees, we can ensure कि with the passage of time हम average performer को excellent performer के बराबर लेके आएं ताकि दोनों को equal benefits मिलें. But the condition is, condition should be that there should be certain criterias. There should be pay for performance. Another reason is when we're talking about the poor performance of employees in the public sector, that is, there are like there is a vertical organizational structure. Of course, when we talk about the vertical organizational structure, there are so many channels. It's a long hierarchy. So grade 5 writes to the grade 10, and grade 10 employee sends his file to grade 16, and grade 16 sends to 17, 17 to so on and so forth. So there are so many channels. So it is like wasting time. As a professional, I believe that we need to reduce the time required to make decisions, because there are so many number of channels are involved when you are making a decision in the public sector. So a vertical structure, that is one of the reasons for the delay of decisions. So when we compare the public and private sector performance, one major factor is the response time. Private sector has a shorter response time, whereas the public sector is a longer response time. And these days, जब आप बात करते हैं, is now the survival of the fittest. Now you need to do the best in these days. World is a global village, so we need to have speedy decisions. We need to have on-the-spot decisions, and that is what is required in this world today. So there are so many reasons when we talk about the performance of public sector employees and why their performance is declining. So this is really very important here, that we need to focus not only on symptoms, we need to focus on the actual root causes of the poor performance of the employees who are working in the public sector of Pakistan. Administration was understood as static. It was understood that administration was implementation of policies and programs of government. कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के बारे में हमेशा यही एक राय कायम की गई और यही एक ऑब्जर्वेशन दी गई कि गवर्नमेंट की जो भी पॉलिसीज हैं, जो रूल्स हैं, जो प्रोग्राम्स हैं, उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन इज डूइंग ऑल दैट. The concept of efficiency were not the domain of administration. Again, this was an observation that efficiency was not the domain of administration. Now we continue our discussion on new public management. Management was understood as dynamic and applicable to private sector, where efficiency was the criterion of operations and task. So now you see that जो हमने previous slide में देखा कि efficiency जो है उसको, that was not the prime focus of administration. जो एक observation की गई जब हम बात कर रहे हैं पिछले era की. And then when we talk about the private sector, efficiency को बहुत focus किया गया कि efficiency जो हमने पहले discuss किया कि with minimum input we try to get the maximum output. And of course, in order to sustain, in order to lead in the market, this is really very important that we should be generating our own revenues, we should be generating our own sources, because we cannot be dependent on other sources of revenue other than our own organization. The various names for new public management reflect differing views of what is happening in organizations, but they do have some points in common. So these common points are: first, greater attention paid to the achievement of results and the personal responsibility of managers. So जब हम new public management की बात करते हैं, तो there are some commonalities here. That the first one is more and greater attention is being paid to the achievement of results. So we are talking about result-oriented organizations. We are talking about those organizations where there is a concept of sense of responsibility. Like for example, ऑफिस में आप, like for example, आपसे एक ग्लास टूट जाता है ऑफिस में, ₹50 का ग्लास है, वो आपसे ऑफिस में टूट जाता है. नाउ ऑनेस्टली स्पीकिंग, आपको एज एन एम्प्लॉय कितना दुख होता है. एंड देन वही ₹50 का ग्लास जब आपके घर में टूट जाता है, तो देन फिर क्या होता है? वी ऑल नो दैट. So what is the root cause here? Why we have extreme sense of responsibility at our homes, and why do we have lack of sense of responsibility at our offices? This is really a very important question we need to ask here. So when we talk about new public management, उसके ऊपर emphasize किया गया कि we need to build and strengthen a strong sense of responsibility. But first let us discuss that what is the root cause. जब ग्लास आपका ऑफिस में टूटता है और जब घर में टूटता है, तो what is the root cause? Why we, जब हम बात करते हैं ऑफिस के मुख्तलिफ जो एक्सपेंस आप करते हैं और जो घर में आप एक्सपेंस करते हैं, तो why we have a different state of mind? So this is really very important. So यहाँ पे जो चीज़, जो root cause according to research जो है, we need to involve our employees in decision making. Because घर के अंदर जब कोई भी डिसीजन लिया जाता है, तो तमाम एडल्ट्स को, तमाम जो अर्निंग हैंड्स हैं और तमाम जो हमारे एडल्ट्स हैं, तमाम को डिसीजन मेकिंग में शामिल किया जाता है in most cases. But in जब हम पब्लिक सेक्टर की बात करते हैं, तो this is really very important that we need to involve the low management and middle management in decision making. So once we involve our employees in decision making, once we like delegate decision making authority, then we can develop a strong sense of responsibility. And I guarantee you that once we are able to develop that strong sense of responsibility in our employees in the public sector of Pakistan, we can achieve the impossible. Because the word impossible itself says that I am possible. So with the right attitude and right behavior, we can achieve the excellence in the public sector of Pakistan. And that is the major theme of new public management. Secondly, there is an expressed intention to move away from classic bureaucracy to making organizations, personnel, and employment terms and conditions more flexible rather than rigid. Very important point here, that we need to move towards flexibility. If we have rigid rules and regulations, of course we cannot bring improvement. When we talk about different organizations, earlier we were comparing that private sector and public sector analysis हम कर रहे थे. So there are like two type of organizations: open system organizations and closed system organizations. Now closed system organizations क्या होती हैं? Who depend on their internal feedback to make decisions. वो सिर्फ अपने employees जो उस organization के अंदर काम कर रहे हैं, उनसे feedback लेके they are making decisions. Open system organizations या open systems की जब हम बात करते हैं, these are those organizations who are getting feedback from inside and outside the organization. So दोनों तरफ से वो ले रहे हैं, अपनी internal जो उनका है within the organization वहाँ से feedback ले रहे हैं, and outside the organization से वो feedback ले रहे हैं. So open system organizations are getting feedback from all angles. So which one is better? Of course, the open system organizations' performance is much better than closed system organizations. Same is the case here, that we need to bring flexibility. We need to bring a contingency management approach. And in simple words, we call that situational management approach. we need to act according to the situation. And if we are not acting according to the situation, if we are ignoring the ground realities, this becomes really very difficult to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the public sector. Thirdly, organizational and personal objectives are to be set out clearly so that achievement or results are measured. Again, very important point here, that we need to look at the organizational and personal objectives, and we need to make these objectives really clear. So what we can do here, we need to have an alignment between the individual objectives and organizational objectives. Now, why do we work? Can we ask this question here? Every individual who is working in the organization, whether public or private, has certain objectives. And those objectives are called personal objectives. Right? On the other side, every organization has its own objectives. So in new public management, what we do is, we need to clearly define those personal and organizational objectives, and then we need to align those objectives. So organization major responsibility is to facilitate the individuals to achieve their personal objectives. And individuals, they are trying their level best to achieve the organizational objectives. So organizations and individuals, they are working as a team, and they are moving in the correct direction. And that correct direction is the mutual, path, both agreed and then move towards that agreed path. The next fourth is, senior staff is more likely to be politically committed to the government of the day, and hence would implement the agenda of the government. And fifth, government functions are more likely to face market tests, such as contracting out or reducing government functions through privatization. So we see that these days privatization is common, and so government also privatize different public organizations. So they go for privatization, and of course when there are certain, of course, advantages, and of course there are certain disadvantages of privatization as well. But overall, when we look at privatization, the benefits are more than disadvantages. Now, this is the most important facet of new public management, whereby the role of government as provider of service is reducing, and more services are being provided by the private sector. Now, this is really a major change we see in Pakistan. Now, government is reducing its role as a service provider, and the major role is shifting towards the private sector. And how the government is doing it? With the help of privatization, and of course supporting the private sector of Pakistan. So government of Pakistan brings those laws, rules and regulations which supports the private sector. So private sector is like being supported in Pakistan by the government. So jitni bhi governments hain Pakistan mein, in one way or the other. So any political party, when that political party comes in government, so they on one way or the other, they are supporting and of course facilitating the private sector in Pakistan. So the purpose is, ताकि जो पाकिस्तान के अवाम हैं, they should be, सर्विस जो उनको प्रोवाइड की जा रही है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन की हम बात करते हैं. सो दिस इज रियली वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि जब हम एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन की बात कर रहे हैं, सो पीपल शुड आल्सो look at the private sector for getting employments, instead of looking all the time towards the public sector organizations, because it is almost impossible that the public sector organizations, they provide employment, full employment opportunities to all the people of Pakistan. So this is a change we see here in Pakistan. For example, transport in city was provided by government earlier, which is now being provided by private sector. So again, we see that we have different private transport companies in Pakistan. And in most cases, जब हम उसको compare करते हैं, तो private sector is performing the best in most cases. Now talking about managing internal components, the internal components of organizations have these aspects. The first one is organizing and staffing. In organizing, manager establish structure, position, authority and responsibility are assigned. In staffing, the selection of right person for the right job is done. So this is really very important कि जो internal components हैं उसको manage करते हैं in new public management. Right person for the right job is done. So there is a match, like for example, when you are hiring person, you are matching the person's qualification and experience with the job responsibilities. And the better the match is, the better the performance is. Directing personnel and human resource management system. The capacity of organization is in its member and their skills and knowledge. Of course, focus is now moving towards human resource management. Now, human resource management means what? It means your human resource planning, your recruitment selection, training and development of employees, performance management, compensation management, employee management relations, ethics, job safety. So these are the areas, those areas are called the major functions of human resource management. So these are now looked in detail, and the focus is shifting on that human resource management functions. The human resource management recruits, select, trains, etc. people to build capacity and select right people for the right job. So the public sector organizations, they are moving towards the strengthening of human resource management functions. Because when we talk about employees, employees are the most important asset of an organization. So we need to develop those employees. We need to strengthen those employees, and this is only possible when we have a strong HRM system in place in our organization. Controlling performance. Various management information system, that is budgeting, accounts, reports, performance appraisal, etc. help manage in making decisions and achieving objectives. So again, controlling performance, you are evaluating and assessing the performance of your employees. And then, of course, you are taking corrective measures. So improving the monitoring and evaluation system of an organization is really very important in order to promote efficiency and effectiveness. And then we talk about dealing or managing external components. Dealing with external units of organization subject to common authority. If the organization is large and geographically dispersed, then senior managers has to deal with managers of unit which are geographically or otherwise dispersed. So this is really very important, और इसके ऊपर focus किया जा रहा है in order to bring quality in it. Dealing with independent organizations, agencies from other branches or level of government, interest groups or private enterprise that affect the organization ability to achieve its objectives. So this is really very important here. And dealing with press and public whose action or approval and agreement is required. You know that आजकल media is everywhere. So dealing with press and public whose action or approval and agreement is required. So this is really very important. We need to, as a public sector organization, this is really very important that they need to look at the public interest. They need to watch the public interest. On the other side, they need to have good relations with media. How to deal with media, how to manage different issues, and how to provide required information to media. So public sector organizations, they are more accountable when we talk about media, when we talk about the people of Pakistan. So what the public sector needs, they need the approval and agreement from all the stakeholders, because the public sector of Pakistan, they are addressing the entire Pakistan. So this is really very important that every action or every decision taken by the public sector organization, that has a very strong and deep impact on the people of Pakistan, on all the stakeholders. So this is really very important that किसी भी decision को लेने से पहले, कोई भी action लेने से पहले, कोई भी नया rules and regulation जो है उसको implement करने से पहले, उसको develop करने से पहले, so agreement and consent from the all stakeholder is really very important. Beginning of management approach. For much of the 20th century, there was little difference in management structures or style between private and public management. Large companies were hierarchical, and it was only from the 1950s and 60s that the problems of bureaucratic rigidity became evident in the private sector. Because it was realized that division of labor and working manual for all management functions had limitation. Someone needed to take responsibility to achieve results. So this is a beginning of a management approach, because it was realized that the division of labor and working manual for all management functions had limitation. So we need to look into those root causes of those limitations, because I will again re-emphasize that in Pakistan we need to address the root causes, not the symptoms. So we need to focus on the root causes of those limitations, and once we know the root causes of those limitations, of course, cure is not difficult. The apparent success of managers in the private sector led to concerns being expressed that the public sector had fallen behind. Now, as a comparison, we see that the private sector is performing well. Even if the decline of public administration in legitimacy since the 1950s is true, that decade is too early for a change of management style. According to 1968 Fulton report in the UK, it noted concerns with the management capability of public service. Now we are going to discuss that report here. According to that report, it recommended that the system be opened up, outsiders be employed at all levels, and that the rigid hierarchical structure in which barriers were placed at several points is removed. So this is a very important recommendation here, that we need to employ from all levels, and we need to remove the barriers which are hurdles on the way of better efficiency and effectiveness of an organization. Reforms in the public sector in developed countries like USA and Australia were introduced, and it was questioned if the public service had the management tools, flexibility and capacities to meet the challenges of changing external environment. Again, a very important finding and recommendation, that we need to look into the resource requirements of the public sector, because this is really very important. If we are not providing the required resources, how we can expect better performance? So better performance and of course required resources, they have a direct relationship. Now we move on towards conclusion of our final discussion of this course. So this lecture was focused on the concept of new public management. From the traditional model of public administration, which emphasized hierarchical structure, dichotomy of policy formulation and implementation, neutrality of public servants, to more flexible organizational structure, the concept has evolved and generated new controversy. Now this thing is debatable. A new controversy has started. The new public management is driven by market. It is driven by the concepts of measuring individual and organizational performance to achieve results. Now, this is really a very important point here, that we are focusing on the individual and organizational performance to achieve results. So, this new public management approach is focusing not only on the organizational results or not only focusing on the achievement of organizational objectives. This is focusing on the objectives of individuals as well who are working in that organization. So it means that it is a team effort. And when we say that 1 plus 1 is equal to 11, so it means that when these individuals, when they work separately, the result is 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. And when these two are working together as a team, 1 plus 1 is equal to 11. And this is called synergy. When the total is higher than if you have individual efforts. So here it is highly recommended that more focus is on the teamwork, is more focus on relationship building. The new public management encompasses the concept of general management functions, whereby the strategy, internal components and external components are to be understood well to achieve results. So this is really very important, that we need to put in our efforts to understand those internal and external components when we are talking about the performance of an organization, and what major functions these internal and external mechanism plays there. The new public management has evolved in developed countries after the recommendation made by the Reforms Committee in UK. So this is really very important, that the concept of new public management has generated debate on the role of government. So this was all regarding new public management. Now I hope that with the help of today's lecture, we are able to understand the new public management system. In our today's lecture, we have talked about different, like for example, areas that needs immediate improvement in the public sector of Pakistan. And then we have talked about political reforms. We have talked about all the stakeholders. We have talked about how we can bring real improvements in the public sector of Pakistan. And finally, we have also talked about the public and private sector. What are the similarities and what are the differences? How we can improve the performance of public sector of Pakistan. And here I would suggest one thing at the end of this course, that problem is not a problem. The way we see the problem is the real problem. Meaning that we need to bring improvement in our attitudes. As a Pakistani, we need to bring improvement in our attitudes and behavior. Innamal amalu bin niyat. Amal ka daro madar niyat par hai. And niyat is the attitude. So the major difference between the poor countries and the rich countries, there is only one factor. And that one factor is the attitude. So God bless you all. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Today we have concluded this course of Fundamentals of Public Administration. Inshallah, I hope that with your smart studies, with your hard work, you will achieve your objectives. Best wishes for all of you. Thank you very much once again. Khuda Hafiz.